it comes back again to this communication word I keep using. And, I always say the root of all conflict is miscommunication. So usually the school is involved in social services, and it's not because you have harmed your child. That's a whole other issue.
Please call social services if somebody is harming their child.
Yes. So it's not that a child has been harmed, but there's perceived harm, and no harm has taken place, and the school has called them. It's because of misunderstanding.
Of course, growing up, mom wasn't the name of one person. So yes, of course, I knew my biological mom. But there were so many other moms, and we used to name moms by location, so we had big mom, we had mom located in one place and the mom located in another place. And so this idea that motherhood, parenting was something that was shared. But one of the things that struck me then when I came to this culture, when I didn't understand it initially was, I was in church. So little kids were running around in church, and I kind of tried to, restrain, and it wasn't taken to kindly at all.
Really study the system, understand the system. I attended conferences where they were talking about education and the school system, so I could really understand it, because I didn't even know that there were what they call here sets, where you can be in lower set, you can be in higher set.
Just this point you made about my mom, because I did used to give my child homework, and we used to do reading together and all of that, and they'll pick up on that and say, I remember one of his teachers, he was in primary 4. Taylor said he's not reading, they pick up on that. But my point was, why are you picking up on the reading when I'm doing reading with my child? But if my child was watching TV till 10, no teacher ever picks up and says, your child is watching too much TV. Did you still see what I mean? So it's almost as if the positive things that you're doing to reinforce knowledge and all of that are the things they focus on. But if a child is up all night playing games, that's never been something that anyone has raised with me. Maybe it's happening, I don't know. But that's never been something that anyone's raised with me to say, the teachers were concerned because the child is watching too much TV or watching too much games. It's always when you're trying to do what you think is in the interest of the child. And for a lot of families, the frustration is, but I wasn't harming my child. I wasn't trying to hurt my child. I was trying to do good. So what are some of the things that families need to be aware of in that space? And how do they navigate it in such a way that they're bridging both cultures effectively?
It comes back again to this communication word I keep using. And, I always say the root of all conflict is miscommunication. So if somebody is calling social services, and usually the school is involved in social services, and it's not because you have harmed your child, that's a whole other issue. So you've not
Please call social services if somebody is harming their child.
Yes. So it's not that a child has been harmed, but there's perceived harm, and no harm has taken place, and the school has called them. It's because of misunderstanding. So perhaps, as we were talking earlier about maybe I'm trying to get my child to move up a grade, and so I'm giving them homework, and the school is not understanding my point of view on that, and they're going to feel like, okay, this is abusive to the child. It's not. It's just that they've not understood my perspective. So there are circumstances where I feel like maybe the school is harming my child. I cannot call social services in such a circumstance. I have to discuss with the school, but it's just because of the amount of paperwork and safeguarding that's in place in schools. They have a checklist. And if you are ticking off that checklist, if the child is coming in looking tired, looking withdrawn when they're not normally, maybe becoming more aggressive than they were before, the school is looking out for. They have a checklist and they're ticking them. And if they are ticking too many boxes, they're going to talk with the child. And then when they talk with the child, what we hope would happen is that you have discussed with your child why you are doing some of the things you are doing. So that's again still communication. So when my child understands, For example, my child said to me that I know how much education is important in our household, and so we might not go on all of the holidays that other people go on, but if I need a laptop for studies, I need some books for studies, I know I will have them, and she tells that. But if she's going to someone and saying that, I'm miserable and I'm not, my parents don't care about me, they deprive me of everything, that's going to be flashing alarm bells. You see what I mean? So I think the first step is even helping our children to know why we are doing something.
Exactly. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. We need to first of all start discussing our values with our children.
Yes.
And maybe just also telling them how things are different and why you're doing it.
Yes. Because when we do that and they are questioned, because I've not seen where social services are called on presumption. Every case I've had to get involved in is always because they've talked to the child and the child has said something. Now, of course, this is very difficult with young children because young children, they don't have a filter and they will just say whatever. I remember my two children having a fight, and my younger son said, "Oh, he stood on my head and he did this." And if he goes to school and says, "My brother stood on my head," it's not going to end well. So they say things without a filter, without understanding what they're really saying, so that it is more difficult with younger children. But even then, we can still start conversations early. But particularly when they get a little bit further along primary school, we really have to, and we cannot be coaching them because that will come across as fake, But and then obviously, so I've talked about the emotional side of it, I've talked about perception, and then we get into discipline methods. And one of the times I was called to help advocate for a family was because they had been having a group discussion about discipline in the home, and I felt like, why was the school having this conversation? It almost felt like, are they trying to bring out some stuff? I don't know, but it was a classroom discussion about how they are disciplined, and this boy just said, "Oh, even this morning my father slapped me and I was able to know the right thing to do." And of course this was a big alarm bell. So they have to extract the child from that class and talk to the child about what happened. And like I said, children are just honest and just said everything. And but what was great about that case was I was able to come in as an advocate, and also I was saying earlier about the community. So if you find yourself in a position, firstly, know that it's not allowed in the system in the country to slap anyone.
Absolutely.
So from but the fact that didn't end badly was because as an advocate I was there. And what I mentioned was that as a faith organization, we would be holding some safeguarding training and some parenting classes, and we would step in and help to do some training and give some different skills, because a lot of times parents say, "Well, I don't know how to discipline my." We're not talking about older children, we're talking about little children. Sometimes they don't. How do I dialogue with them? What do? I don't know any other way. And so I told social services that's what we would do as an organization. And with that promise, they were able to understand that things, and then they check in after some time and things were better. So if you find yourself in such a position where it has ended up where social services has been called, lean on the community around you, ask around, what can I do, how do I get myself out of this? Don't argue, don't fight, just try to lean on others.
And again, that's why we have Diaspora Mom, because like we said, Diaspora Mom is really about building a community where we help each other, we support one another. One of the things we always emphasize is that wherever you are, you've got a village. You've got to find that village. Where is my community? Where I am? Because if you're going this on your own, all alone, just what Pastor Andrea has just talked about, that person who is there, who can advocate, who can communicate in the language that is understood. Yes. So I think, because I know that you and I have had conversations about some of those experiences where you're stepping in, you're communicating in a language that social services understands. So they know that, okay, there's a responsible adult who understands the values here and who understands, but also able to advocate in terms of what this family is about.
Yes, because the intention of said family was not to harm the child. It was literally just, this is what I knew to keep my child on the streets and narrow. And in fact, in the conversation with social services this particular day, the father was expressing exasperation that this discipline that you're talking about doesn't seem to be working, because I see a lot of children very unruly here, and I'm just trying to make sure my child doesn't. So if they can hear the heart of the parent that my intention is not to hurt my child, I want to keep my child on the streets and narrow. And so it's being able to communicate that in a way that will be understood. Yeah.
And I mean, just talking about this reminds me of years back when I was still in another area. One of the cases that came up, it wasn't even actual beating. Again, it was one of these young children. So this little girl will go to school and literally play with water every day and come back wet and all of that. And I think the parent got exasperated with that. And because in some of our cultures, one of the ways in which we try and keep children on the straight and narrow is that we threaten. We'll never do any of those things, but we threaten, and the children know that. They know that, of course. I mean that, but sometimes when they're young, they don't. So I think in this particular instance, the parent has said, if you come back home again wet, you will see what I'll do to you. When I'll beat you, I'll kill you or something. And I think the next message gets crossed, to be honest. So the next day, I think in school, the child said, no, I can't touch water. Oh, why? Because if I do, my mom's going to, whatever the mom said. And that statement alone, even though the child was happy, well adjusted, whatever, the child was kept in school, father was picked up, interviewed, and all of that. And so I think for some of our diaspora families, especially ones that come from my part of the world, where we say things, we train our children with more than just words. Sometimes it's just a look.
Yeah.
You know, the look. And your child just goes, or we threaten. It's understanding that some of those things can be understood differently in the new culture, because that culture doesn't understand your background. Now, if that child had said that in, say, Nigeria, every teacher would know that that's how we talk. You know, that's how we talk. But that's not how we talk here. So our culture is how we do things here. And it's that coded DNA we don't have.
And I think I just want to say that it shouldn't lead us to be afraid as parents that, anything now, I'm going to get picked up. I think it's just about having these conversations and talking to those around you so that you know, just be exposed to some of these things, but don't always, because if we're not careful, we can just walk in constant fear. And that causes anxiety.
And some parents are there. Some parents are not in that space because the family was talking to me because they're not quite sure what to do, and they don't want to lose their children. They almost feel like they've lost the initiative on how to parent and on how to draw boundaries, because once the child pushes, they're not quite sure how to respond, and so they back away. And so they came to me with that frustration that now I don't know what to do, because my child is running my home, because the least thing I do, I'm afraid that it will happen. And that's why we talk about ensuring that we have the tools to be able to still bring up our children, to still parent. And one of the key words is communication. Communicate with our kids, but also communicate with the school and with teachers.
Very much.
And I know just one other example from one of the things I used to do when my child was young, especially when you go to a new class, I'll go and speak to the teacher. Maybe when he's been there for a bit, I'll say, how is he doing? What does he feel like to you? Is he happy? So I want the teacher to affirm that they have a healthy, well-adjusted, rounded child with them. And then I'll say, look, if there's anything, please just let me know, because he means the world to me and I want him to do well. And also acknowledging. I acknowledge with the teachers that I come from a completely different context. So if there is anything you want us to have a conversation about, we will have that conversation. And I think that helped. Didn't help with one particular one. One particular one took that as a weakness. But that helped as well, because then we could have those conversations as to, you know.
And sometimes other parents can be a resource as well, you know. Having something like WhatsApp is very popular. You can have a WhatsApp group for parents. Some schools have them set up already, or you can do that yourself. And then you're able to also learn from others as well, how others are doing things. You know, one day you're helping to pick up your child's friend from school. Another day they can help you. Leaning on that community again, and just being able to learn other ways of doing things. Okay, how is this family navigating this? You know, I have 2 boys, and boys are very wonderful, and you know, so I have a WhatsApp group of other boy moms that I'm part of. So if there's anything that we are concerned about, we're able to drop it there. We're able to learn from one another. So just lean into all these resources. There's a lot out there to help you.
And there is a WhatsApp forum for diaspora moms. So if you want to be part, just contact us. I will add you to that family. Again, a huge resource for families to learn from one another, because that's a huge point.
Very important.
Yeah. So perhaps in talking about all of that, I think we kind of touched on it a little bit, but is this thing about ensuring that our children are well-rounded and they are whole. And we know that one of the biggest challenges in the current context is mental health challenges. Again, for somebody like me who grew up in the context I grew up, it wasn't something that was talked about. You were meant to be just resilient, you know. You kind of just got on with it. And a lot of people from my background, my context, understand that you just get on with life. You know, life happens to get on. But I think even in this culture, not just mine, even in this culture, we now know that there's even frustration. Yeah, you have to think about Gen Z, you know, and all of that, Gen Alpha, and all of the complexities because of the different environment that they live in brings. So I just really touch on that, because again, the work you've done with families around psychological concerns and what parents should look out for to support their children ever before they get to a problem, but also how to respond if, you know, there were any concerns.
Yeah, I mean, you made 2 points there. One is, you know, how do you see it before it gets critical, and then if it's critical, what do you do? So how you see it before, what's my favorite word? Communication. You know, one of the things that I learned from my mom growing up was that idea of being fully involved in my life. But even at that, there was things I would have kept from my mom. As wonderful and as involved as she was, there was a lot of, she has to say that. She's saying I'm special because she has to. So again, I think it's important to help our children to see their value. I think a lot of what's going on today is that we are devaluing the importance of life, the importance of purpose, even from a young age. So how I think, you know, to avoid these things coming is firstly keeping the lines of communication open, allowing our children to talk to us about anything, but then also having a wider circle that is also re-emphasizing some of the messages that we are telling our children. So like we said, it has to be the whole person. So making sure that, you know, they're part of, they have other people speaking into their lives. They are part of, you know, now as we're talking about going into, even from primary school, being parts of different groups. And then as they're going into teen life, they can be part of, they're volunteering, they're doing different activities, they're feeling like they have a purpose, that they're feeling like, I understand why I'm here. Because one of the biggest, you know, I do have the opportunity to counsel a lot of young people, perhaps as they're getting into their early teens and late teens. And I would say 100% of the people I've counseled that have had problems and got to a crisis, it started from, why am I here? What is my identity? You know, why, you know, there's so many people, why am I here? So I think working on identity is a very important aspect, I would say, is first, and then allowing the children to talk openly and understand. I said communication was about understanding things from the other person's perspective. So a lot of the young people I've spoken to or counseled would say, I have this concern, but when I try to talk to my parents, they will say, what have you got to be upset about? You have everything. Everything around you works. You have got good education, you've got everything you need, you've got clothes, you've got food, you've got a house. What have you got to be upset about? But it's very important to see things from their own perspective, because what is upsetting them might seem very insignificant, but is very big in their eyes.
You're seeing a lot of things, so maybe I just want to really emphasize some of this. So you said, one, purpose. Children need to understand, young persons need to understand, what's my purpose, why am I here? And I think, again, because I put my cultural lens on, is that oftentimes when everything just happens, children are not quite sure. Whereas maybe for some of us, we grew up in a different context where the purpose may have been clear, but we need to sort of help children to understand purpose, why am they here, and then identity, who am I, how do I fit into that purpose. And then the third thing you said is we need to understand that whatever is important to a child is important.
Yes.
We shouldn't look at it through our own lens and say, well, when I was growing up, I walked 10 miles to school. I didn't eat 3 times a day. And perhaps if I had a meal, I was happy. So what do you have to worry about? That for that child in this current context, that problem that you may see as very insignificant is actually quite significant to them. And while yes, you shouldn't go overboard or whatever, you should take it seriously and communicate with them about how they're feeling about that problem.
Yes, because it can be something very small. A case I was working with of a young girl who was self-harming, was cutting herself, and it had been going on for a long time before it came out, and the family got to know. But when I talked with her and said, what happened? It was to do with a boy at school had said something. And what I then tried to talk to her about is, if what somebody said has affected you this much, it means that you didn't know your value in the first place. And so we may think that children, don't they exist just to, learn and study and grow, but they are already people that can be so fundamentally hurt. But if and it can be about their personality. Some people are very sensitive. For some children, they would just laugh it off, like, who are you? But for some, it really, really impacts them. And we could try to say, oh, it doesn't matter, just ignore them. But if it's going in, we have to allow them the space to get all these emotions. So this girl turned on herself, because there was so much emotion that she wasn't able to bring out to anybody, perhaps because she felt no one would understand.
And in some ways, she may have been right, because again, one of the things that I have also come to learn a whole lot more about is being much more sensitive about mental health. Because as I said, it's not something that a lot of us grew up to understand. And in so many families, it's still very much taboo. That is not something you can talk about. And so perhaps, because I know you've worked with lots of young people, which is why I'm really having this conversation with you. Because I want our listeners, my audience, to understand that, look, what we want is children who are thriving.
Yes.
And if a child has a problem, whether it is physical or psychological, it doesn't matter. We need to pay attention to it and get the right support for it.
Yes.
Communication, listening, ensuring you build your child up first. But if despite that something gets through, then how do you deal with it? So,
and again, the community you've surrounded yourself with, you might not even have seen something, but somebody else might have seen something. So, if they're part of a faith community, you've got, presumably they have teachers, they have youth workers, if they're part of a club or society, they've got people working with them. So rather than being isolated and keeping, almost that kind of nuclear setting that I was talking about earlier, where there's no opportunity for anyone to see anything. So making sure that you're part of this wider community that can have a voice and be able to come to you and say, and then when they come to you and say, I'm noticing something, you don't become defensive. But being open to hearing what other people are saying. But then if it has gone so far that we're now seeing a complete breakdown, we see, even teenagers becoming depressed, don't want to get up, don't want to go out, don't want to work, don't want to do anything, now you need to go and seek help. And, you're not going to get into trouble by going to the doctors and saying that something is not right with my child. Because again, the earlier fear we were talking about, if we're walking in fear of, somebody's going to try and take away my child, then we're not going to want to go to any services for help. We're not going to want to talk to teachers. We're not going to want to talk to GP because we're thinking, but it's not your fault. And there's such a bigger awareness now about mental health that if you really feel that way, you perceive that something is not right, take them to the doctor. It might be something even hormonal. It could be it could be even something like an iron deficiency. It could actually be something physical that is causing it, or it could be something emotional. Then what a lot of parents have talked to me is a worry that if I take my child to a counselor that's outside of my faith, they may start to say things that I don't want. For example, maybe gender identity, for example. If, they may want to put some things. But at the end of the day, it is necessary to get whatever diagnosis that the doctors want to give. And then from there, how to lean on maybe like for me, that's a pastor. You can come to the pastor and get advice. You can go to leaders that will help you. But the first port of call, if your child has a broken leg, you're going to go to the doctor.
Yeah, and that's a critical point. If your child has a broken leg, you'll go to the doctor. If your child is emotionally not where they need to be, you need to go to the doctor. Because raising thriving kids is about ensuring that we do all that we can to help them navigate what is a difficult space.
Absolutely. So lean on all the resources there is out there. And, people like me do exist. Christian counselors that you can also come to. And so I have people who actually do attend the NHS counselor and come to the end of that, and it's very helpful. There's CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, that gives them lots of tools and lots of help and has gotten them so far. And then they come to me, who's someone who is a Christian and believes in, about purpose and, about our place and our identity, and can then take them a little bit further in their faith.
And I know that there are even the ones that there's this professor at one of the universities I was talking to around some of these issues as well. And if you think you've even got, they call them culturally aware counselors who can understand the cultural context as well.
Yes.
Because I would say a lot of parents are worried about what counselors will tell
yes,
their
and I've heard that a lot.
And maybe it's not for today because another big topic we'll talk about. Actually, this one where the parents are then labeled toxic because the counselor may not understand just what was the cultural context to what parents may have done with their kids. So the parents are labeled toxic and then they're told to cut off, and so a lot of parents have that fear as well about that. But just Pastor Andrea is saying you can find faith relevant counselors the same way you can find culturally relevant counselors that can work and support the child in a way that adheres to your values but looks at the interests of the child and supports the child's mental well-being, their own well-being, which is really
so don't let it go too far without seeking help, because social media is out there also, and is when your child will click on one video because it resonates with how they're feeling, before you know it is suggesting content, and that social media is being your child's counselor. and having the same exactly the same NHS counselor you are afraid of, but they are guided by safeguarding laws. They are guided by principles that they are not allowed to do certain things. But social media is just out there being your child's counselor, so it's more important that you be proactive. And if you are not happy with the counselor, you can get another one.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we've kind of talked about a lot of really practical things that you may do, both from all the way from schools, how you communicate with schools, how you navigate that space, to social services or other services in the system. We've talked about supporting your child through the cultural barriers of, different ways we speak and do things, but ultimately ensuring our children are whole psychologically as well as physically. So it's not just their educational well-being that we should be concerned about, or their physical health well-being, but also their mental well-being.
Yes.
And these things are challenging, but there are resources, there are people, which is why we're having Pastor Andrea today say, she exists, and she's supported so many families.
There are many like me.
Yeah, and there's so many. So wherever you are, whichever space you're in, find the right kind of support for your family, so that you have a village that you can draw upon. If you have fears, discuss them. If you have questions, ask them. I'm having this challenge with my school. How do I navigate it? Navigate that particular challenge. I'm having this particular challenge with my child. How do I communicate differently? I'm having issues around boundaries, setting boundaries with discipline in a way that is culturally appropriate for where I'm at. How do I navigate that? Ultimately, I think it's to say your values are valid.
Yes.
Whichever culture you come from, and like I said, ultimately we all really just want what's best for our children.
Absolutely.
So your values, discipline, respect, boundaries, ambition are all valid. How do we do it in the culture that we're in a way that respects our values, but also ensure that we respect the laws and ensure that our children have a well-rounded support system.
Absolutely.
That's kind of what we've talked about today. So, thank you so much, Pastor Andrea. But just before we go,
yes.
Probably think I know what you're going to say. But just before we go, if there is any parent out there thinking, well, we've talked about all of this, but I don't even know where to start. What is the one thing you want to leave with that parent? That from everything we've talked about today, that they can take away and just hold? Because sometimes we're having this conversation, somebody may be listening to us who is in the thick of it and thinking, you don't even know, you guys are just talking, you don't know where I'm at. What is the one thing we can leave with them if they are in the middle of it?
The one thing I can leave with you is that you can do this. Your child was given to you because you can do this. Your child could have been given to any other parent, but this child was given to you, and I believe that is for a reason. So however inadequate you're feeling, however confused you're feeling, however you feel like I can't do this, I want to tell you can do it. And you can do it because all the resources you need are within you and around you. And so just get to know your child, get to know them. My buzzword, communication. Communicate with that child. You knew I was going to say that.
Oh, I know.
So, just get to know your child, and as you know them, every other thing will begin to fall in place. It's just that our children can be very confusing, can't they? And if you have 3 children, everyone is different. I'm talking from experience. So what strategy I employ with child 1 will not work with child 3. I have one that if I just look at them, they know to stop doing what they're doing. I have another one that I can shout and they will laugh at me. So they are different. So get to know each one individually, but most importantly, you can do this. You've got this.
You've got this. You can do this. We've been given a wonderful opportunity to be parents, whether as mothers, fathers, uncles, aunties. It's a fantastic opportunity, and it comes with challenges, but hopefully also joy. So whether you're in the thick of it or you are in the, much easier time, what Pastor Andrea wants to leave with you today is you can do this. So thank you so much, Pastor Andrea, for your time. Thank you for all the insights, for your wisdom. drawing on both your personal experience but also your professional experience. And thank you for the work that you do in the community, because as I said, I know how much work you do with families from different cultures, and just helping them, in that space, either as counselor, as an advocate, or as a support. So thank you very much.
And thank you for this opportunity. It's been wonderful.
So thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you've learned one or two things. Please leave in the comment section what you found helpful. Perhaps some insight on what you do as well that other parents may find helpful, because we're all learning. None of us is, the expert in all of this. We're all learning. Everybody has different tools. So if there are different tools that you've used that you found helpful, please drop them in the comment section so that other families can also benefit. And if you haven't already done so, please like, subscribe, and share, because we want more and more people to benefit from what we are learning here. Thank you very much again, and until next time, take care of your loved ones. Bye bye now.